For that statement, and I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. We thank the Special Representative of the Secretary General, Leila Zerugi, and Special Envoy of the Secretary General, Said Djinnit, for their thorough briefings on the situation in the Democratic Republic of the Congo and the process of implementing the peace, security, and cooperation framework for the DRC and the entire region. Many thanks also to all of the Secretariat staff and MONUSCO, as well as other UN agencies who helped us in carrying out a very successful and very important visit to the DRC. During our time in the country, all members of the Council expressed the hope that the timely holding of the 23rd of December elections will help to reduce political tensions in the DRC, stabilize the situation in this state. And as we were all able to see, the technical and legislative preparations for the December votes are proceeding in accordance with the electoral calendar set out by the National Election Commission. It is important that under the auspices of the International Organization of the Francophonie, there was an audit of the electoral rolls, and in September, their final version was published with repetitions and inaccuracies removed. It is welcome that half of the country's political parties have already signed the Election Code of Conduct. The vote is approaching, and so is the publication of the final list of registered candidates. We call upon opposition forces to refrain from a negative agenda and to actively participate in the election campaigns, and not to expect the Security Council to give evaluations and assessments of the decisions of Congolese courts. At such a responsible stage, we cannot accept, and it would be irresponsible for the future of the DRC, any heating up of the situation. This also fully applies to the use of the electronic machines for printing voting bulletins, the introduction of which, as we have been able to see with our own eyes, is taking place apace. At the same time, we also call upon the DRC's leadership to make additional efforts to build confidence among the main political forces of the country. As we understand it, the legislative preparations for the elections is already being done by the DRC's CENI. And we agree that in order to avoid problems and hiccups in the electoral process, sustainable financing needs to be ensured. We respect the decision of the Congolese government to rely largely on its own resources in this matter. And in parallel, we draw attention to the logistical capacities of the UN stabilization mission in the DRC, which stands ready to become involved in the country's efforts, the country's authorities' efforts at any time. At the same time, the role of the UN mission in organizing and holding the elections should not go beyond the mandate set out in Security Council Resolution 2409. The protection of civilians in the election context must be done with full observance of the basic peacekeeping principles without interference in the internal affairs of Kinshasa. Mr. President, elections in the DRC are not in and of themselves a panacea. We must focus on the social and economic agenda and pay attention to resolving the root causes of the crisis. And also not forget about the need to continue the fight against illegal armed formations in the east of the country. They continue to represent a threat for the civilian population, which could destabilize the Great Lakes region. We are confident that this last circumstance should be considered to be the main indicator of the country's stabilization. And depending on whether that is resolved or not, That would determine the prospects and time frame for the withdrawal of MONUSCO, since its main role is precisely rectifying the security situation. Military means alone will not be enough to achieve a stabilization of the situation in the east of the DRC. The implementation of the peace, security and cooperation framework must be continued in the eastern parts of the DRC and the Great Lakes region, and assistance must be given to strengthening the organs of state authority and the restoration of and reconstruction of social institutions in parts of the country that are liberated from rebels. We also must note the significant progress that has been made in implementing the provisions of this document. We welcome the launch of the mechanism for the repatriation of former combatants, which is of course creating a positive momentum in the interactions between the DRC, Rwanda and Uganda. We sincerely hope that ultimately these countries will be able to resolve this long-standing problem. And it is to be welcomed that we are close to a solution on the matter of relocating to third countries representatives of the South Sudanese opposition who arrived in the DRC in August 2016. We note the role of Said Djinnit in helping to attract private investors to the region, to give a boost to economic cooperation among countries in the region, and to strengthen peace and confidence in the region. Mr. President, we agree with the opinion of regional powers that resolving the problem of illegal armed formations in the Great Lakes region could be helped by improving the effectiveness of the Force Intervention Brigade of MONUSCO. In this respect, we believe it appropriate to focus their main activity, the bulk of their activity, first and foremost on the most problematic areas of the country. In conclusion, I would like to call for attention to be maintained on the subject of ensuring the security and safety of peacekeepers. Thank you.
Agradezco al distinguido representante de la
I thank the distinguished representative of the